All right, so before we get into the video, I just want to give this shifter knob away. So this is the one that we did for the 100K Make It Kustom giveaway. We had tons of you guys commenting. I think that there's over 3,000 entries for this giveaway. And like I said before, we did not make a copy of this. We did not make a casting of it. This is hand carved, one of one. I'm not making another one that looks like this. So it's a special little shift knob. Hopefully it goes on something cool. So right now I am using a comment picker and we're gonna choose somebody. So we're just loading comments right now. We're at 2,600, 2,700 comments. So once it gets up to all the comments, we'll be able to choose somebody. Okay, so we've got 3,636 comments, and now we're gonna start the raffle and pick the winner. Theo Anden. Love your work. Well, thank you very much. Hopefully you love this shift knob, Theo. And just get at us at makeitkustom@gmail.com. That's custom with a K. Give us your full address and I will send that to you wherever you may be in the world. So let's get into the video, guys. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Make It Kustom. Something a little different for this video. Right now, we are kind of in production of the planishing hammers. We got a bunch of hoops here. We got all of our top bars here for the 24 and the 36. We got all the 36-inch lower hoops here. So what I'm gonna do in this video is I'm gonna kind of troubleshoot and figure out how I can build these hammers the most efficient way and most repeatable way possible. So what I'm talking about is building a jig to make these hammers. So obviously this is something that I've never done before because I've built my prototypes by hand on the fixture table, but because we have multiples and multiples to do, we need to find a better way to make them because it takes too long to make one, at a time on the table. So my idea is to make a frame jig that has both sizes. We do a 24-inch hammer and a 36-inch hammer. So I want to be able to use this jig for both of them, and I want to be able to use it for the top jaw and the bottom jaw. So what I'm planning on doing, I've got some material here. This is 2x2 square tubing. I'm going to basically make a U shape out of that 2x2 square tubing. And at the top of that U shape, I'm going to have a piece of 2x3 1/4-inch wall HSS. You can see this is the really thick stuff right here, 1/4-inch wall. And that is going to be what the frame jig backbone is essentially. So I'm gonna be able to weld fixtures to it that is gonna hold the hinge of the jaw and the tool holder or the die holder. That's for the lower jaw, and then for the upper jaw, it's got to be able to hold the hammer head and it's got to be able to hold the hinge as well. So the one side will be for the bottom jaws, so we'll have a mount for the hinge and then two different spots for the 24 and the 36-inch anvil holders. And then I want to be able to flip this jig over and use the same bar so that I can fixture my upper jaw, which is I'm going to show you on the actual hammer. So the top of the jig will be able to make this top bar, the bottom of the jig will be able to make this lower bar, and that's the plan. I haven't figured out how I'm going to jig these pieces yet, but that'll come. It kind of one thing leads to another. That's how I fabricate things. I start at a point that I know enough information about to build, and then I build on top of that and build on top of that. The other thing that I'm thinking about is I want to be able to weld this all the way around. So if I were to build a jig that was clamped to the table, I'm gonna weld one side, how am I gonna weld the other side? Do I gotta unclamp the jig and turn it around and weld the other side? Or do I gotta get all contorted? So what I'm gonna do, hopefully, this is my thoughts anyway, I mean, like I said, this is gonna be a little bit of trial and error here. I'm going to make the whole jig spin. So I've got a 2-inch, where is it? You know what? I'm gonna do a shameless plug for metal supermarkets right here. Like I say, I don't have a sponsorship. They've just been really good to me for like 15 years, and I love those guys. They have crop bins there, which they sell by the pound, and they're offcuts. I found everything to make my jig today in the crop bin. It's for like half price of what it would have cost. And it's kind of nice, like I go there and I shop around in the crop bins. I bring my, my sketch drawing on my piece of paper and I look around in the crop bins until I find, the size material I need, and sometimes I change things up because I found different material that I wasn't thinking about. Anyway, the spinning part of this jig was solely because I seen the material there. And they had a nice chunk, a 2-inch, I don't know if this is, I'm not exactly sure, it looks like 4130 or something, 2-inch solid. And then they had a piece of DOM, which is wrapped up in here. This is DOM, like 3/8 wall, like 07 or 037 wall or whatever. And that's gonna be like a heavy duty hinge point that could support the whole jig, right? So anyway, you'll see what I'm thinking. I'm thinking about stuff. You'll see what I'm thinking. Let's get into the video. Super long intro. Thanks everybody for watching. Don't forget to like, click subscribe, hit notifications. I know this isn't car content, but this is what we got going on. So there's the van. You've probably seen that one already. Let's go. Okay, so this is our pivot on the base. This is the base of it. We're gonna be able to clamp this to the table or maybe bolt it, but our actual jig is all gonna pivot off of here just so that we can swing it around like I was saying. This is the material I'm gonna use for the U shape, and then in between the top of the U shape is this thick bar, and that thick bar is actually the jig. So I'm gonna try and illustrate it so that you guys understand what I'm saying. This piece of the hammer will need to be jigged on one side, so both lengths can be on one side. The lower hoops can be on the other side. So here is the base. This is just a 2D look at it, so picture that being the actual base. This is, angle iron. This is our pivot right here that we just looked at. So that's the base. The 2x2 material I was talking about is gonna go like this, up like that, up like this. Now I want to put a pivot in here, and the reason being is, like I was saying, that 2x3 heavy wall HSS is going to go in here, and I want to be able to pivot that. The one part of the jig is going to have our, that's a terrible drawing of the hammer hoop, but there it is. This is a tool holder, so that's so that we can put our actual, this is our lower anvil holder from the machine shop. Look at how nice that is. I don't know if it's focusing. Anyway, that goes there, so that'll be jigged. This back part is the hinge. So this right here is the hinge. That needs to be bolted in place right here, so that we can make sure that all of our lower hoops are all the same. And the beauty about this is I'm gonna put a second one here for the anvil holder, and it'll have a little pivot like that on it. Not pivot, but a little nub to go inside the anvil holder. It'll slip on like that, and then we can weld our tube. Now the other side is gonna be the other side of the hammer. So we're gonna have another pivot here, and it's going to, that shouldn't have been on an angle, that should be straight, be able to hold the other part, the upper part, and the hammer head. So I want to be able to use this jig for both. I want to be able to make my lower jaws, and then I want to be able to flip it and make my upper jaws. So, and I want to be able to spin it this way so that I can weld it really well. All this extra time, it's like TIG welding, but all this extra time in making a really full functioning jig like this is going to save me time on the back end. Just like TIG welding saves time on cleanup, building jigs saves time on manufacturing And this also makes sure that our quality and repeatability is all here. The other beautiful thing is that the lower jaws, which are all different shapes, we can have any size lower jaw shape in this jig. The other beautiful thing is that the sides of this 2x3 tubing right here are nice and flat. So I'm gonna clamp bars along it to make sure that these tubes stay centered. And that's my plan anyway. That's kind of what I'm trying to build. So now I'm gonna make this U shape, and I also want to make a way to stop the pivot. So when I pivot it, I don't want it to just be free pivoting and loosey-goosey. I want to be able to pin it in different locations. So at this point, when I'm building this pivot, if this is a top view of the pivot, so here's our angle iron. This is top view. Here's our angle iron. And we've got our pivot in the center. I was thinking maybe if I made a circular ring that attached to the center pivot and it had holes in it, and if I made a plate that went across and bridged the gap so that we're not just welding in here, we're able to weld a plate here with a big hole in it. I could put a hole in this plate as an indexing hole. So I could essentially pivot this ring and drop a pin in the hole and stop it at different locations so that the jig is still solid when I'm welding. The other thing that I was thinking of is that obviously we need a way to lock this pivot up here well, so I can either do a ring there and index it, or I can do a big wing nut bolt setup so that you can just tighten it in a spot. I think that because I might be leaning on the jig here and there to weld it, that having a center bolt that tightens down might not be the way to go. It might be better to have it similar to this and have indexing plate. I guess you'd only need an indexing plate on one side to lock it. So that's something I might do. I might make an indexing plate on the outside of this that I can lock a pin into the tube so that we can rotate it to different spots and lock it in. What's up? We got the jig done. She spins, you know, round and round so that I can weld all the way around. We spin, you know, this way as well so that we can have a fixture on the top, flip it to the bottom. We can also flip it to the side to weld things easier in different positions. For TIG welding, a lot of it's all about how comfortable you are and how well everything fits and what position you're in. You know, sometimes welding something in a flat position will produce a better weld or be more comfortable to weld, which will produce a better weld than welding in a vertical up position. So this jig is gonna allow me to weld in many different positions so that I can get really nice welds on all these hammers, and we're all about that. So the next thing I've got to do, now that the jig is complete and it indexes, it twists, it does all that, is I'm gonna make my couple of master copy hammers. I've already got prototypes, but since all these parts are newly machined and redesigned, I'm making 2 master hammers again that come from the same production run of tubing bends, that come from the same production run of CNC parts, so that our quality control is accurate among all of our hammers. And that is the whole purpose of doing all this prep, is not only to be more efficient, but to be higher quality with our end product and more consistent. So thanks for watching Make It Kustom, everybody. I know this isn't really car content, but we're building car tools and we're, you know, doing metalwork, so hopefully you enjoyed it and maybe learned a little bit about TIG welding. Don't forget to like, click subscribe, hit notifications. Stick with us, we got another good one coming.